Start. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama salayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka hamidul majid. Allahumma barakta ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka hamidul majid. Jazakallah khair for everybody for joining here. I'm very pleased to be part of this conference, alhamdulillah, and present Building for Islam, a roadmap to Muslim entrepreneurship. How many of you have ever thought of starting a business? Few of them. What about it within your lifetime? Have you ever thought of within your lifetime you'd like to start a business? So what we're going to talk about, inshallah, today is we're going to talk about better. Better? Can you guys hear me better? Is it somewhat? Do you need to get a different mic, or is it good? You want to try this other one? Let's try now. It's a little bit better. Okay. All right. Do you want to connect the slides? So today, inshallah, we're going to talk about 4 topics. Topic number 1 is the current situation in the Muslim economy. Topic number 2 is the Muslim economy in light of the Quran and Sunnah. Topic number 3 are what are some practical steps for Muslim entrepreneurship, how can we start a business? And topic number 4 is what is the Muslim founder's character and mindset? When we look at the current situation, the global Muslim GDP, PPP, which is the purchasing power parity, it's about $24 trillion. And this is basically all of the Muslim majority countries combined, their GDPs. And that's about 12.9% of the global GDP, which is 186 trillion. Now, when we look at the Muslim population, we're at about 2 billion, according to some of the latest statistics. And that's about 25% of the population of the world. So we can immediately see that as Muslims, we're really not contributing at the same pace as our population. So our economical output is kind of at least half of that. Now, just to kind of give you guys some perspective, the US economy alone, the GDP, the nominal one, is about over almost 30 trillion, and it's only 360 million people. So you can see that only the US economy alone is bigger than the economy of all Muslim countries combined. So that is a problem, right? That is a problem, and the problem is this unpleasant fact that as Muslims, we don't lead a single industry end to end. Think about email. How many of you use email? All of you, right? Do you use a Muslim email system, or do you use like Gmail or Outlook or something? Let's talk about like video conferencing. Zoom, Google Meet, do we have a Muslim option? Instant messaging like WhatsApp, all of these, where are the Muslim options? Or let's talk about phones. Do we have a Muslim brand like Apple, Samsung? What if we go to like business side? You know, like we have a lot of small businesses across the world. Muslim businesses. What kind of softwares do they use? Well, they use all of the non-Muslim software like QuickBooks, Salesforce, MailChimp, website builders, WordPress, to house all of the data. And we're not talking just like Muslim businesses, we're talking Muslim governments, we're talking Muslim institutions, we're talking MASJID, we're talking any kind of governmental or private institution or business. It's literally fully dependent on non-Muslim apps for all of its business activities. But let's get out of that. Let's go to like search and social. Where do you guys search? Do we have a Muslim search engine, or everybody searches on Google, Bing, right? Or social media, right? How do you guys get to know about this conference or this or that? Like everybody's on Facebook, YouTube, this and that. Where are the Muslim options, right? Then we go to transportation. Like we want to transport something from point A to point B in the globe. What do we need? We need DHL, we need FedEx. Where are the Muslim options? Or let's talk cars. Where are the Muslim cars, right? Like we have Toyota, we have BMW, all of those cars, but where are the Muslim options, right? Or even planes, right? We want to travel. We have airlines, but we don't really have planes. We can't produce our own planes. If the West or Asia doesn't give us planes, we can't really fly. And then we go to consumer goods. Like, do we have any Muslim brand for laptops? Or do we have to use HP, Dell, Lenovo? TVs, Samsung. Even clothing, right? Like, alhamdulillah, we have a bunch of small, like, jalabiya brands, but other clothing, like Nike, Adidas, shoes, this, that. We don't have a lot of them. So what's the problem, right? So problem number one is that the non-Muslim companies own all of our data. Every single data point about the Muslimin, they own it. And we have no control over it. We are fully dependent on non-Muslim economies for manufacturing, technology, and even capital. And I'm not going to go into the discussion of how dollar plays into all of this, but for those who understand that topic, it's very clear. We lack infrastructure, both intellectual and material. And let's pause just a little bit on that intellectual one, right? So those two statistics that I gave earlier, let's go back to those two. I couldn't find these anywhere in any proper Muslim research company. I had to go to sources like Statista or Pew Research, because we don't really have our own Muslim research companies that we can trust that they're going to do a credible job with our own data, with our own statistics. So that's the situation of our lack of infrastructure. It's not just in the capital side, and it's not just in the material side, but it's also in the intellectual side. We're really not putting too much intellectual activity. And then what we do is that we're using all of these, right? So we see basically that we use everything, alhamdulillah. You know, we even see like the Gulf countries and this and that. They've kind of come to an economic standard that they live a nice, decent living, right? But then all of these, they are really not building themselves. They are bringing the outsiders to build the stuff for them. What this does is that it basically like you're neglecting the long term for the short term. When you look at like China, when you look at China like 25 years ago, and when you look at China right now, they suffered to get there because they had to build everything from scratch. They had to build all of the manufacturers. But now they produce every single thing. And that's why these tariffs couldn't do anything to them, because they are able to have their economy fully within themselves. And they are fully independent. And the final thing, which is very important, is that everything that gets produced, nothing is being thought with a Muslim mindset. Everything it's disconnected from Islamic economic principles. So that is very important to understand when that happens, right? So just imagine like if any of you uses calendar, imagine if you had in your Google Calendar the prayer times. Why is it so difficult to get in a calendar, but we need a whole separate app instead of using the default apps of the iPhone or this or that to have the prayer times in it? Well, if these were built with Islamic principles in mind, all of those would be packaged in, because the Muslims would build those things with Islam in mind. And they would not, or for example, the social media, we have the problem of like nakedness or this or that. Well, if they were built with Islam in mind, we would not really have all of these problems, right? And a lot of these are not that difficult to achieve. But let's talk about a couple of other examples, right? So how, because a lot of times when we talk like in theory, we cannot relate to how big the problem is. So let's talk about this example, right? How many of you followed this case? What happens with the pagers in Lebanon? Okay, so basically what happened with the pagers in Lebanon is that Israel had full control of probably hundreds or thousands of pagers in Lebanon, and it pushed a button and it literally blew up thousands of Muslims and perhaps Christians in Lebanon. So that tells you that you enjoy other people's commodities until you realize that they are not yours and they can be used against you. So now, if you don't have control of any of your devices, if you don't have control of any of your equipment, you are left at the mercy of others. And when others are going to, when you're fighting with them, that's when you really realize the dependency you have on them. Like, let me give you guys another example similar to this. There is, so the prosecutor that submitted the cases for Israel, the guy Karim in Britain, Microsoft just blocked his email. So now we're talking about the UN guy who was supposed to like bring justice to the world, the prosecutor, the Microsoft. So Microsoft is a US company, has so much power to take now his email, and they've blocked his email. So now we're seeing like this dependence on these non-Muslim companies really harming us. This is another interesting statistic. The top 5 halal meat exporters in the world, you'd expect them to be Muslim, right? Well, guess what? They are not. Brazil is number 1. Australia is number 2. India is number 3. France is number 4. China is number 10. Number 5. So in the top 10, there is like number 10 is actually Turkey, and Sudan is number 6 or 7. But we're really talking about like halal meat. Like we can't figure out our own halal meat, and this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So this is a big problem, right? So how many of you would agree that us not figuring this out is a big problem? So should Muslims lead the world economy, or should they be dependent? What's the way forward? So let's read some of the ahadith, right? So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the upper hand is better than the lower hand. And then one should start giving first to his dependents, and the best object of charity is that which is given by a wealthy person. And whoever abstains from asking others for some financial help, Allah will give him and save him from asking others. Allah will make him self-sufficient. So there are 2 parts to this hadith that are important for the Muslim economy. The first part is the upper hand is better than the lower hand. So how many of our Muslim economies get aid from the West? Probably more than half of them, right? And then, is it better for them to have the upper hand, or is it better for them to lower their hand, right? Like a lot of people claim that, you know, if America removed their aid from Egypt, Egypt would crumble. This is literally like stuff that I hear from people. Is that like the situation that we need the Muslim nations to be? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make him self-sufficient. So this concept of self-sufficiency is very important in Islam. We don't want to be subservient to others. We don't want to be in need of others. You want to be in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you don't want to be in need of others. And when we talk about the Muslim economy, we need a Muslim economy that is thriving and is fulfilling the needs of the Muslims. And it does not need anybody. We have enough land and we have enough resources across all of these countries to be able to fulfill all of the Muslim needs. Another important hadith is the hadith of Anas ibn Malik. If the Prophet Muhammad said, if the final hour comes while you have a shoot of a plant in your hands and it is possible for you to plant it before the hour comes, you should plant it. So this is a very important hadith as well, especially in this time when we're seeing kind of like as if the world has kind of like overpowered us, as if the world has taken over all of our resources, as if we can't do anything. So this is what we call like paralysis, right? When you basically like, you are so shocked that you just can't move, right? And that's what's gonna happen in the day of judgment. You're gonna be so shocked at what you're seeing, and what the Prophet Muhammad is saying, it's still plant that seed, even though you know it's going to be dropped, right? And there's a lot of these philosophies. Some brothers, mashallah, don't want to do anything. They're waiting for Mahdi. Inshallah, Mahdi will come. But we really need to build. We need to plant seeds. We need to contribute towards the Muslim economy because we really don't want to be dependent. The final thing about what Quran and Sunnah say about the Muslim economy that I want to talk about is that Muslims built their own markets. So let's talk about the incident of what happened in the Banu Qaynuqa market during the time of Prophet Muhammad. So there was this wife of the Ansari. She went to a jeweler, a person who was doing jewelry, and a Jew from the tribe of the Banu Qaynuqa, he kind of had a fork and he stripped her dress back and her dress fell. And then the Muslim that was in there, an Ansari that was in there, and they actually started laughing at her. And he became so upset that he actually killed him. He killed him. And then they killed the Muslim, okay? And then that opened a full war where the Jews got out of the covenant that the Prophet Muhammad when he went there, he put a covenant which established justice and rights to everybody. So they pulled out from there. Now, what happened from that incident is that the Muslims established a new market. They realized that that market, the Banu Qaynuqa market, doing all of the trade in a non-Muslim market is not a good idea. So Prophet Muhammad established a market, and we have some narrations that say that he basically told them to expand even that new market that was established, so that he told them there's not enough space. So what we learn is that as Muslims, we should build our own marketplaces. Even, for example, there is like Amazon. Do we have a Muslim like Amazon, right? We don't have a Muslim Amazon or a Muslim eBay or this or that. We're always kind of dependent on the Western markets to trade on. So I want to also tell you guys this story that it just literally happened like a couple of weeks ago. And that tells you that we can really build. It's not that we can't build, because we can see smaller communities that have a lot less potential than us actually build. I met with a guy, he is a Mennonite. Mennonite, it's similar to the Amish. And he was telling me a story that those guys don't use internet, and when the internet came, like their church made internet haram. And but then the business people among the Mennonites, they were like, hey, look, like we gotta do business. There's no way for us to like make this internet thing haram. So what they did is that they gathered and they created a whole internet service provider with the entire networking and everything that would remove all of the haram stuff, the nudity and all of that. So it was not an app, it was literally like the entire internet system with the wires and everything, and they would control it at that level. So what we see is that it is really possible for us to build. It is just like it is for the other communities to build, it is possible for Muslims to build. And it is a need that the Muslims have, and we cannot remain dependent. But how do we start, right? A lot of times we stay dependent on these governments, right? We're like, oh, but such government is not doing anything. Oh, but the government has to provide this. Oh, but the government has to provide that. Well, when we look at the Sahaba, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Uthman, they sponsored military campaigns. They sponsored the wells. They sponsored, so basically these business people made a huge difference in the Muslim economy. And it didn't, the state was not fully established by then, but they still were able to contribute because their niyyah was right. They really wanted to contribute for Islam. What we're going to cover next, inshallah, is how can Muslims, and what is business all about? How can Muslims start? So the first thing is you have to have your niyyah. Your niyyah has to be sincere about building. Instead of you just trying to kind of start a business or build something for the sake of you getting like rich or you being some celebrity or something, that's not how the Muslim should think about it, because the Muslim understands that the rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you work as an employee, whether you do a business, whatever you do, rizq is from Allah. You put the effort in. So once you understand that, then what you do is that you make your niyyah to contribute to the Muslim community in the best way possible within your capacity. And that's where we start. And you don't really need for a business to have a million ideas. You first need the niyyah. You need to basically say, I want to contribute in this way. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the different ways for you. And that's when we go to the ideas, right? Now, when it comes to an idea, a business idea, first of all, we just literally 10 minutes earlier, we saw about 20, 30 ideas that we could literally like work on. Like we need a search engine, we need social media, we need this, we need that. Literally they're like, we need everything. They like Muslims saying we don't have like business ideas, it's ludicrous when we literally need everything. But on top of that, another way to think about it is not only what we need, but what am I good at, right? What am I good at? Because if you're not good at something, you shouldn't just pursue it, unless you're the only person that can actually do it. So if you are, and you can actually take professions quite often to businesses. You are an accountant, open an accounting firm, become independent. You are a marketer, open a marketing firm. You are a consultant, open a consulting firm. You're a doctor at a big hospital, open a small Muslim hospital. This is how you start, basically. You can start from what you know, and you go from there. This was very interesting. Like I was listening to the biography of Sheikh Albani, and he had in the 90s, he had recommended to the University of Medina to actually have a trade school that would teach these students of knowledge. It would teach them trade so that they can become independent, and they don't have to rely on these jobs. Because he realized that it's very important that not only the rest of the Muslimin, but even the students of knowledge need to learn. After that, after you figure out a service or a product, then it becomes marketing. And a lot of people put taboo into marketing, especially in the Muslim community. And there is a right to it. There is a reason to it, because it has been manipulated. People have lied. People have manipulated the minds of people. But ultimately, what marketing is really is just letting people know, and letting as many people know and communicating the value of your product or service. That's really what it boils down to. You have a thing that you do, you can teach, you can let people know about that. And as long as you don't lie, as long as you don't deceive people, and you just tell the truth, that's really what people appreciate. And even if in common sense, right? Like if you have an honest merchant, if you have a person an honest business person, and he's telling you the truth, you're gonna appreciate it. Even the non-Muslims started to understand that with all of their transparency policies, with all of the consumer protections, with everything. They realize that a brand or a company that says the truth is actually gonna be more favorable in the long term. So marketing is not something to shy about. It's really just the ability to let people know. It's the ability to be honest with them, and it's the ability to figure out the right target audience and give them the right message. And we'll just give like one example of marketing, how to connect the audience with the product. So if you went to a beach and you tried to sell hot tea, what do you guys think? Will it sell or no? What do we have in here? We have a scenario where you are selling the wrong product to the wrong people at the wrong time. So marketing is about finding the right product finding the right product, selling it to the right people at the right time. Or for example, think about a mechanic shop reaching you, calling you when your car is running fine. Like, that's not gonna do anything. But if he calls you when your car is broken, that's a whole different thing. So marketing is really connecting the dots between the time, the place, and the audience. The final thing, after people get to know about your product or service and they get to trust you, then is the selling part of it. And the selling has rules, both in Islam, but even from a common sense perspective, right? If you don't give the product to people, if you don't ask people if you don't tell them that you're selling and you're shy, imagine a lot of people are oh, but I cannot sell, I've never sold, I cannot do this. Well, if I'm hiding behind my desk and I have something to sell, is anybody gonna buy it if I'm hiding behind? No, nobody's gonna buy it. I have to put it in front, and I have to be able to tell people that I'm selling it. And then when they come, I shouldn't be shy of telling that I'm selling it, because they may need it. If they need that product, it's gonna benefit them. And if they don't need, we go back to the target audience. We're targeting the wrong people. Finally, once we have sold, we have to deliver that product, or we have to deliver that service. So that's the final thing that we have to provide. And if our initial promise during marketing and during sales does not match with what we gave, then we're being dishonest, right? So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ one time went to the market, and people were selling fruits and all of that, and he put his hand in one of the buckets. And what he saw, and he pulled it up, and what he saw was rotten, some fruit or some vegetables or something, and he asked, what is this, he said. Because what was happening in there is that they were putting the most beautiful ones at the top and the rotten ones in the bottom. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that this is one who cheats is not one of us, right? And in these cases, when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says one who cheats is not one of us, it doesn't mean that he's not Muslim. It just means that this is not a behavior that a Muslim does, and obviously it's a sin. So from there we see that the promise, if you are like deceiving people, if you're deceiving people, what's going to happen is when the delivery happens, when he gets that bucket of 1 pound or 2 pound or whatever, when he gets that bucket, he's going to see it. And when he sees it, he's going to be disappointed by you. And this creates both, like from Muslims, if you're selling to Muslims, it creates a hatred among the brothers. That's why you never deceive. But if they provide all of the defects, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that if you show all of the defects of your product, Allah will bless that sale. And there are narrations of some of the Sahaba that there was one Sahabi that keep talking so bad about his product that people would say he's never going to sell it. And subhanAllah, he was the one that would sell the most. So being transparent and being honest is one of the things that the Muslim entrepreneurs and business people need to do. Now, what are some of the benefits, right? So we all go through this rabbit hole of like go to four-year college, and then some of us do masters, and then find a job, and then stay 10, 20 years. What are some benefits to actually being a Muslim founder, right? Or actually starting your own business? The number one is that you have the potential to actually earn halal money, pure. You have full control over the products that you sell, over the services that you sell. You have full control over the marketing. You have full control over not getting a riba. You have full control over the environment that you build. All of that is contributes to your money being pure. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ spoke of a man who was in the desert and he was making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he said, how is his dua going to be accepted when his clothing is haram, when his food is haram? So eating basically with halal money is an obligation. It's not something that you just take lightly. So but if your employer is forcing you to sell something that is not suitable, or for example, some of their business practices are not suitable, or their money, their entire capital scheme is from riba system. Now, sure, we may get fatwas that all of that is halal and it's not us and all of that, but you're still in a position of compromise. As Muslims, we really don't want to be in a position of compromise our entire lives. We want to be in a position of independence and clarity and certainty, and not in a position of doubt. The second thing is that as a Muslim founder, you identify the shop, where you have the shop. You can get your shop next to a masjid. You can pray all of your salah at the masjid. A lot of the brothers find it impossible to pray 5 times a day at the masjid. When the Sahaba used to say, what did they used to say? They used to say that only the hypocrites didn't pray at the masjid. So how do we connect these two? Like, we can never imagine, like not only now, but within our lifetimes, a lot of Muslims can never imagine of praying 5 daily salah at the masjid because of their jobs. When the Sahaba used to say, even the one of us who was walking, who couldn't walk, 2 of us would hold him to take him to the masjid. The third thing is that any money that you make as an employee, you're making a fraction of what the owner is making. No matter what you are, whether you are a doctor, do you guys think the president, like the owner of the hospital makes more, or the doctor? No matter what you are, even if you're a lawyer, do you think the law firm makes more or the lawyer? No matter what profession you do, the owners are going to make more money. That's the reality. The fourth one is that you can build a Muslim workplace. You don't have to, like, if you don't want to be around women, or if you feel that the dressing code is not correct, or if you feel that the party with alcohol is not appropriate, all of that can be fixed. You are the boss, you control it. Then there are many Muslims that cannot get like 20, 30 days off from their job. They have to quit their job to go to Hajj, right? Or they want to go to Umrah, or they want to do itikaf. Like, all of these things become very difficult, but if you build your own company, you could achieve it. Now, let's be real, right? Let's not think that starting a business is that easy and you, on day one, you achieve all of these. That's not what I'm saying in here. But this is the potential that you have with business, right? And if you structure it the right way, you would be able to achieve all of these milestones. Finally, where do we look like? When we're trying to like build big MASJID or big organization and all of those, where do we go? We go to these business people, right? Hey, like you have the big money. So when you build these businesses, you have the potential to contribute to the community and to the society a lot more. You are capable of contributing at a bigger level, at having a higher impact. Finally, another important point is that you cannot inherit your job, but you could inherit a business. And this could be a family business that can go generation after generation after generation. And instead of your children trying to go to this rabbit hole of finding a job, jumping from one job to another, going to school and all of that, you can actually have a thriving family business that goes from generation to generation and brings this independence to the family. So we see that there are quite a few benefits to being a Muslim founder. Is that path easy? Absolutely not. It's not easy. Is that path impossible? Well, no, it's not. You know, like Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu used to say that in a hadith, he said that he was while he was studying with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said the Ansar were busy with the farm and the Muhajirin, they were busy with the market, with the trade. But then when we look at the trade of the Sahaba though, this is where our biggest disconnect is. This is what we don't see these days. We don't see the Muslim entrepreneurs do what the Sahaba did. I don't know how many of you know, but 6 of the 10 who were promised Jannah were entrepreneurs, were business people. You know, you have Uthman, you have Abdurrahman ibn Auf, you have Talha. So you have all of these Sahaba, but what was their mindset and what was their character and how were these businessmen among the Sahaba different from what we expect of the businessmen today? We see the Muslim business people being always in compromise. When are they going to do the next haram, and when are they going to try to find that fatwa that cuts corners, and when are they going to say that it's fine to get this loan just because my business is going to die, but I cannot, my liquor store is going to die, I'm not going to be able to eat food if I don't sell liquor, I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm like all full of excuses. But what was the understanding of the Sahaba who did business? How did they do business? When we look at these people, right, and we're going to take examples from the best of them, right, from the ones that were promised Jannah. Let's look at the example of Umar radiallahu anhu. So Umar, as you guys know, is among the most knowledgeable among the Sahaba. So we can immediately see that the business did not stop him from seeking knowledge of Islam. How? What did he do? When he used to go to the market, he used to tell his partner, he was in a partnership, he used to tell his partner, you go one day to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stay all day, and then come back to me at the end of the night, and then I will teach me everything what he taught. And then he'd say, then you will work the next day, I will go the full day, and I will tell you at the end of the night everything what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us. Right? So that was what they understood. We also know about Abu Bakr, the famous story when he went in the morning. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, who among you has given charity? And Abu Bakr raised his hand. And then Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who among you has fed a poor person? Abu Bakr raised his hand. Who among you is fasting? Abu Bakr said, I'm fasting. This was right at Fajr. He said, who among you has taken a janazah? He said, I have. And who among you has visited a sick person? And Abu Bakr said, so all of these things Abu Bakr had done before Fajr. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, whoever combines all of these 4 deeds in one day, Allah will give him Jannah. But now what we see is, what was Abu Bakr? Well, Abu Bakr was a business person, right? But what we see is that the business people among the Sahaba, they were among the most righteous. Because what happens with business is that business is this standard of, you are kind of at the highest level of the society because you have the most money and the most capital usually, and people want to follow you. And because people want to follow you, if you are not righteous, people are going to follow your example. Like people want to follow the example of Elon Musk, people want to follow the example of Steve Jobs, people want to follow the example of Bill Gates and so forth, but we know their deeds. We know their inconsistencies. We know their actions. They are not good. Their moral is not good. So, but what did Abu Bakr do? Abu Bakr inspired the best. Abdurrahman ibn Auf became a Muslim from who? From Abu Bakr. Talha became a Muslim from who? From Abu Bakr. And what did they do? They made it in the top 10 Sahaba who made it to Jannah. So, when you start a business, what is important is 3 things. It's important to understand that risk is going to be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like your job, that risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the business is also risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing is, you got to ensure that you earn halal money. You cannot compromise in your earning. You need to have your earning pure. The third thing is, you have to be moderate and righteous. You cannot just drop everything to do business and you cannot fulfill anything. These Sahaba that we're talking about, these were the ones that were praying at night. These were the ones that had memorized the full Quran. Abu Bakr was a Hafiz, Umar was a Hafiz, all of these guys. They were visiting the sick, they were giving the charity, they were taking care of their families, they were taking care of the communities, they were fighting jihad. These were not people who were just sitting down on their desk and doing nothing. These were people that were well accomplished. So, what are we building, inshallah, to help the Muslimin? We're building a platform called muslimbiz.com. What is this platform? This platform is designed to help Muslims break free from economic weaknesses and build successful businesses and communities of believers. We have a vision of building a lot of different programs, but the first program that we have launched, inshallah, is the Accelerator. It's a part-time accelerator to help Muslims transition from their job to a business. Because we realize that it is not possible to just tell a Muslim with a family with 2, 3, 4 kids, hey, just quit your job and just try this out and see how it works. So we built a program that can help them learn everything they need about business, from getting the right idea to getting the right market to getting the right sales strategies, marketing and everything, to getting the product up and running while you're still working and you're doing this part-time. Once this kicks in and it starts bringing money in, then you transition to entrepreneurship. The second program that is inshallah going to come soon is that we're going to connect Muslim investors. We're building a pool of Muslim investors that would actually help these new Muslim entrepreneurs with halal funding, halal money through established Islamic contracts, partnership contracts like Mudaraba and Musharaka and so forth, to help them build wealth, right? The third one is we also want existing Muslim businesses who have already an established business to grow, become more professional. Unfortunately, we go from city to city, and we see a lot of these businesses that are kind of like as if they are in the previous century. You go to a non-Muslim business and then you go to a Muslim one sometimes, like it's just like it's as if it was a 1980s business. Why? We don't need that, right? We need these professional businesses that are thriving. So that's why we're building the Muslim Founders Club for existing Muslim entrepreneurs, as well as growth services to help them. So with that said, inshallah, we will close this seminar, and I'll open the floor for any question that you guys have. I ask Allah to make this beneficial for you and all of the Muslimin, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. You guys don't have to ask questions. Bismillah.
Bismillah. I guess one question I had was for, I guess, younger students maybe going into college or high school and things like that, or in college, what would you recommend like the pathway to this be? I know a lot of people, for example, say if you want to get into like an industry like tech or something, like you want to at least work there a few years and then get an idea of like issues to solve. Do you think that it should be like when you say like, for example, you're making like computers and automobiles for Muslims, do you mean like the target audience would be the Muslims, or like the people in charge is the Muslims?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically he is saying, should the target audience be primarily a Muslim for this business? Let's say that you want to do computers. Should I only sell to Muslims or should I sell to everybody else? Well, it depends on the business, right? So for example, computers, if you can produce a computer, you don't have to sell to just Muslims, right? Because it's not a product that only Muslims need. You can sell to everybody. As long as, what you want to keep in mind is three things. Number one is that you want to keep in mind that your product is halal. So a computer would be halal, right? Number two would be your audience, right? Like who is your audience, who you're selling to? Because if you're selling, for example, to the non-Muslims, can you sell to IDF? No, you can't, right? So even there could be segments within the non-Muslims that you shouldn't sell. And the third thing is the practices that you take to build that. Whether you are cheating or this or that, that's important. And the fourth thing, it's like, you shouldn't just try to build something that it's like so bad. You should try to compete with the best companies. If you're going to build a computer, just compete with Apple or Lenovo or whoever does these computers. So I don't think it's necessary for you to target only Muslims, even though there are product categories that Muslims need. But you could put in those computers elements that could establish that Islamic identity. You could input, for example, already like the prayer apps in that. Just like, for example, Samsung, when you get Samsung or when you get Apple, Apple puts its own apps automatically. Samsung puts its own app automatically. You have a Muslim computer company, and you say, for example, hey, our value proposition is that it's better data storage, or it's more credible, or this or that. Whatever your value proposition is for that computer, you basically add something about Islam into it that makes the lives of the Muslims a lot easier. But you don't have to sell it just to the non-Muslims. You know, an interesting fact is that in UK, for example, there are a lot of non-Muslims that buy halal meat. Now in the US it's not very popular, but in the UK it's very popular, where a lot of non-Muslims buy this, to the point where the Zionists had to do a campaign of saying to the non-Muslims, don't buy halal. Anything that you see with halal, they said don't buy it. That's how scared they were, because people realized that this halal meat, it's good, better quality and all of that, and they started trusting it. So as a Muslim, when you produce stuff that are good, then Muslims can benefit, inshallah, from that. I think the brother had a question.
Assalamu alaikum. I have two questions. So first one is, if we can get those slides, it would be helpful. The presentation, the slides you went through.
Okay, inshallah. I think I can share them with a brother. And, or maybe you can stop by. We can figure out something to give you the slide, whoever needs them, inshallah.
My second question is about the product and the audience, right?
The product, did you get it closer?
Yeah, so the product or the audience, which one do I have to start with? Like, do I examine communities and then see what products are needed in there? Or do I start with finding the product and then examining communities?
You don't start with neither, you start with a problem.
Okay.
You try to identify a problem that exists, okay? A problem that you can relate, a problem that you know people have, okay? And you ideally have it, but even if you don't have it, let's say your friend has it, okay? Because that is gonna help you a lot to both have test people who are going to be able to test your new product that you're coming on, to be able to understand what problem they have, and to really design the product or service in a way that it's suitable, okay? So generally, like, think about what is the problem? Thirst. I'm in the desert. The problem that I have is that I'm thirsty, okay? What is the solution? The solution is some water. So then I'm coming up with what's going to remove my thirst. I'm coming up with a product, right? But first you got to understand who is this. You got to understand where the problem is, who has it. So you understand the problem is thirst. Is this person who is in a desert who has this problem. Therefore, I need to provide a product that solves this problem. So you want to think of, like, what problems do you have in your life? What problems do other people have? And then you start from there. You start listing, like, for example, 20, 30, 40 problems that you can potentially tackle. And then you go from there.
Yeah, just follow up. So let's say I find the problem, and there are n number of products out there, and also there are n number of communities, and the need can be different, right? Do I go and get the product and then examine the need? I know the problem, right? So there are n number of...
So let's get there, right?
Okay.
Product is usually the last thing.
Okay.
Because if you know the problem, you should immediately be able to answer it. Who has this problem?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It should be natural. Like, if you give me a problem, you say, for example, I'm thirsty. I already know that you are thirsty. So you already mapped the problem with the audience. Then you need to find a suitable product that solves this problem of this audience. So let's talk about, we have a problem in, let's say, some desert or some other place with electricity. For example, I know, for example, areas in Pakistan, electricity is not there, some people told me. So the way how they have to bring electricity is usually through solar power. So, but now they don't have money. So they don't have electricity. We're offering them solar power, but they don't have money to buy it. So now what is the problem? The problem is they don't have electricity. Who are these people? This is a demographic that is far away, that doesn't also, their income is low. So we need to come up with a solution that brings to them electricity with the lowest amount of money for them. Then there may be another group of people that their economy is different, their problem is different. But usually, like, what dictates the type of product is the type of problem and its severity of the problem, and the audience. What are they men, are they women, where do they live, what are their economic standards? All of those things, you package all of those things together, and then you create the product. I always tell people, don't worry about the competition initially, because you're always going to be able to find unique value points that are going to make you unique over time. Like, initially focus on the problem. There's always going to be, like, enough people who, as long as you've identified a market that there is a substantial problem. I mean, if there's just one person who has that problem, that's just not going to work.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you.
My question, Bismillah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is about marketing for a new small business. Is it really necessary to hire a marketing company, or it's better to start off marketing yourself? I mean, going around and convincing people or telling people about your product, or it's better to spend money and hire those big companies that do the marketing for you?
So there are two things to it, okay? So a marketing agency generally is not an entrepreneurship agency, and I'll explain what that means. When you're trying to market a brand new product, that requires the mind of an entrepreneur. And it requires a bunch of test and fail until you figure out how to deliver that message properly. And these marketing agencies, they will charge you for every single trial, and you're not going to see any result. And they usually have like standard packaged products that may not fit your thing. I always tell people, if you're starting a new business, you want to do it, you want to be able to get to a point of you selling by yourself without involving anybody. You can, obviously you're going to need knowledge, so you should seek guidance and learn and all of that, but definitely I'd recommend you starting by yourself until you start selling, and then later on bringing a marketing agency, it's fine. But we go back to like self-sufficiency, right? We want as much as we can to build businesses that are self-sufficient, and we want to learn these knowledge, and we want to prioritize the long term of our business versus the short term of our business. And if you do all of this yourself, you're going to learn a lot more. Now, it may take a lot longer, right? But you're just going to learn a lot more. Now, there are cases where a marketing agency can speed up the process, but there's just so many of those, and you're going to need to learn how to select the one that gives you the right results.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
My question is a little bit like
You can get
related.
it closer.
My question is more related to fiqh on this matter. When you say tijara, is it the customer service business? It is also considered tijara, like creating website for others, tijara for others, because there is no product involved, like a physical product involved.
It's a service, right? So anything. So basically, in the past, like tijara, it was a generic term, included everything, any business transaction, right? So a business transaction requires two people to agree on either a product or a service, and an amount, and that's a transaction. So any transaction is part of the tijara.
Jazakallah khair.
What is that? I think the Sheikh has a question. Yeah, he can give it to you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me, a little nervous. Not a good public speaker. I do have a question though. Like I understand like the autonomy. I'm not a business person, but I'm understand the need for the autonomy. But how would somebody because it's a bigger problem than people really realize. What about the monopolization of I'm talking the people that control all the money. Okay, the Judeo-Christian families, big. Then what happens? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I've seen this. There's always been that division. I was born here, so my culture and everything. But I came to Islam. It was probably started when I was a kid. Okay, my father's he's Catholic, but I told him I took Shahada, a few years back, and he was really cool about it, and he actually knew more about Islam than, it didn't surprise me, he's well educated, but what about, there's always been this division between the East and the West, and how do these people account for getting into a market and competing against somebody? Because what happens if you start to compete, and then how do you avoid things that are haram, like interest?
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, I know they didn't really touch base on like interest. How do you avoid that?
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to charge you interest. Your business or your idea is good, but then if you have somebody that controls the money,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a bigger monopolization than people really realize. How do they avoid that? like I said, I'm not a business person, but I just thought I would maybe say it, and maybe it's a little edgy of a conversation.
No, yeah,
You know.
I think it's a very important point to clarify. So number one is that as Muslims, we're not responsible for the outcome.
Okay.
We're responsible to put our efforts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the doors to success, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us success if we put the efforts. And even if we don't achieve the success, Allah will reward us inshallah in the hereafter. But our duty is not really to focus on how are we going to break these media systems that have been there and they are killing us and then they don't let us speak. How are we going to break these networks of riba that we cannot get out of? How are we going to break all of that? What you got to do is you got to start with the niyyah of you have to break it. Like when Prophet Muhammad, when Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu fought both the Romans and the Persians at the same time, and he defeated both of them with this small army, this would have been the question: how can we overpower these two large empires? But that was not the Sahaba's concern. The Sahaba's concern was to put the effort and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them success and guidance. We have so many talented people, and a lot of times our problem is really not when we get into it and we're getting stuck, it's because we don't even start. We get paralyzed of even starting. But once we get into it, like for example, there is a burger company, one of the most successful burger chains, a halal burger chain in UK. Among the most successful ones is halal. It's a Muslim brother who owns it. So he managed to break through all of that without any riba.
Of course.
So we just need to start, we're not at a phase of hey, we're so powerful, but we're kind of trying to maneuver. We're at a phase where we're just not starting. We're paralyzed and we're not doing anything.
Okay.
So that's inshallah, I'd say it's the answer to that.
Okay. Yeah, because God doesn't want us to just sit there. He wants you to pursue it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
We're good. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We have to inform them that about second session or no need?
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام. Yes.
the special techniques when most people aren't there, when most people aren't around, when most of the class isn't available. He'd say, okay, listen, you guys came today, not too many people came. I'm going to teach you guys a special technique. So, alhamdulillah, I guess that's what I'm going to be doing today. Now, before starting off this talk, I'd like to point out the reason why this talk, inshallah, is going to be special. And it's a talk that is there for you to better appreciate Tawhid. If you don't understand Shirk, then how are you going to appreciate Tawhid? And to make this matter especially clear, it's important to be aware of the context in which Islam was revealed and the first people that Islam was presented to. Now, how deluded were the pre-Islamic Arabs? How lost were they? How deeply had they fallen into shirk? In this talk, I'm going to be going into depth in regards to some of those things. And inshallah, you're going to appreciate more the light of Tawhid after the darkness that submerged the region for centuries. I think that the best place to start this talk off is by highlighting the significance of the idols and a bit of the background surrounding that. Ibn Abbas has a narration, Sahih Bukhari, that gives us a background about what led to the emergence of shirk in pre-Islamic Arabia. He said, all the idols which were worshipped by the people of Nuh were worshipped by the idols, were worshipped by the Arabs later on. Okay? All the idols which were worshipped by the people of Nuh were worshipped by the Arabs later on. As for the idol of Wad, it was worshipped by the tribe of Kalb at Dawmat al-Jandal. Suwa' was the idol of the tribe of Hudayl. Yaghuth was worshipped by the tribe of Murad and then by Bani Ghutayf at Al-Jawf. Ya'uq was the idol of Hamdan, and Nasr was the idol of Himyar, the branch of Dhil Kila'. The names of the idols formerly belonged to some pious men of the people of Nuh, and when they died, Satan inspired their people to prepare and place idols at the places where they used to sit, and to call those idols by their names. The people did so, but the idols were not worshipped till those people who initiated them had died, and the origin of the idols had become obscure, whereupon people began worshiping them. By the way, guys, if you noticed what I'm saying, from what Ibn Abbas is mentioning, there's one really interesting point when speaking about the tribe of Yaghuth. He says that first it was worshipped by Banu Ghutayf, or excuse me, by Murad, and then Banu Ghutayf, right? He mentions two tribes. This gives you, there's this subtle little thing that Ibn Abbas is saying here. He's saying that according to Muhammad bin Habib al-Baghdadi, he explains that Yaghuth was the tribe that was actually worshipped by Madhij as a whole, okay, which included many tribes, which included a few tribes, and it was specifically among the sub-tribes of An'um. Now, however, the tribe of Qutayf fought them over it. They fought Madhij over Yaghuth, and they took the idol and they escaped with the idol to Najran, and they took the idol and kept it with Banu Harith bin Ka'b. So even Tabari says that Yaghuth would be shifted from tribe to tribe, and they would continuously be fighting over it. And one of the battles that ended in a lot of bloodshed, it occurred actually during the time of Badr, and it was known as Yawm al-Razm. And this is a specific day in which people were fighting over the idols. Now, I mean, it might sound strange, like people are literally killing each other over the idols. But what's causing this? Why is the idol so significant? Now, before answering that question, inshallah, this will be covered, the significance of the idols. How did polytheism first initially entered in Arabia, according to a report mentioned by Ibn Hisham? He says, and of course, keep in mind that Ibn Hisham is from the 3rd century, but he lived throughout the 2nd century. He had multiple scholars that he's actually quoting in this report. He says that his scholars told him this. He says that, according to his teachers, Amr bin Luhay left Mecca towards Sham, and when he was in al-Balqa, which is in modern-day Jordan, he met some Amalekites, and they were worshipping idols. This is how it started off. By the way, keep in mind, now today if someone says Amalekites, it's a dead tribe, lost tribe. Even Jews who cared about the Amalekites and their history more than others, they wouldn't have this information, but Arab scholars or Muslim scholars that were very interested in genealogy, they actually listed or mentioned the tribes that the Amalekites ended up becoming, or the tribes that the Amalekites trickled down into. So in any case, he says, Ibn Hisham, when quoting this report about Amr bin Luhay, remember, this is the first person that spread polytheism in Arabia. He says in any case, he saw them basically, Amr bin Luhay, he saw them worshiping the idols, which caused him to ask, what are these idols that you're worshiping? And they said, these are idols that we worship. If we ask for rain, then rain comes down for us. And if we ask for victory, then victory comes to us. So he said, Amr meaning, do you mind giving me an idol to take to the land of the Arabs for them to worship? So they gave him an idol called Hubal. And so he brought it to Mecca and told the people to worship it and to glorify it. Now, by the way, as for when this specific matter occurred, if we look into the books of Sirah, they do a really good job, by the way, at listing out genealogies and lineages of the Sahaba and whatnot. And by the way, Amr bin Luhay is the father of the tribe of Khuza'ah, the father of Khuza'ah. And we actually notice that between him and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's around 300 years. So this polytheism, this worshipping of idols, isn't really that early, specifically in Mecca. Now, in regards to these idols, the polytheists, they would refer to them as gods, as you all know. And this is something that the Quran captures on multiple occasions. But keep in mind that these same polytheists, they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that He's the creator. And we have in Surah Al-Mu'minun, Allah tells His Prophet, peace be upon him, to tell the people, ask them, to whom belong the earth and all those on it, if you know. They will reply, to Allah. Say, why are you not then mindful? And ask, who is the Lord of the 7 heavens and the Lord of the mighty throne? They will say, Allah. Say, will you not then fear? Ask, in whose hands is the authority of all things, protecting while none can protect against him, if you know? They will reply, Allah. Say, how are you then so deluded? So in other words, polytheism of Mecca, or the polytheists in Mecca, they affirm that the supreme being is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, they worship the other idols despite this, and they would provide this excuse which is captured in Surah Al-Zumar. Indeed, sincere devotion is only to Allah, As for those who take other lords beside him, they say, we worship them only so that they may bring us closer to Allah. That's what they say. They don't believe that these other idols are the creators or whatnot. Just bring us closer to Allah. In regards to how the worship occurred, it occurred in many forms. Now, worship itself is something that's identified as like an extreme form of humility and subservience. It includes seeking help from the idols in the way that I've mentioned previously in regards to asking for rain or for seeking their support in war, victory in war. They would also make sacrifices to the idol in exchange for health, for blessings. Hubal specifically, he was approached for matters that had to do with the unseen. And Azraqi reports from Ibn Ishaq that at Hubal there would be like 7 cups. Okay, imagine this, 7 cups in front of Hubal. And you had like a caretaker who's standing next to Hubal. And you'd have like these arrows in the cups, and they would have like these different labels. So there would be a cup specifically about compensation. There'd be a cup that would say yes and no. A cup that had to do with like yes and no. If you have like a question that has to do with, should I do this or should I do that? Or should I do this? And they would pick out an arrow and it would say yes or it would say no. And Ibn Ishaq says that this would even include for matters like circumcising a child or getting married or burying the dead, or if they doubted in someone's lineage, they would go to Hubal, they would bring 100 dirhams and they would bring slaughtered meat. And they would give it to the custodian of the cups, and they would bring forward the person that they came for. For example, the person whose lineage they're doubting. And they would say, oh, our God, they're saying to Hubal, oh, our God, we wanted for him this and that. So bring out the truth concerning him. Then they would say to the custodian of the cups to draw the arrow. So if the arrow came out with the words, he is from you, then they would accept him, that Khalas, he's someone from their tribe. But if it came out saying that he's from other than you, then they would just consider him to be an ally. They wouldn't consider him to literally be from their tribe. And sometimes it would come out with the label attached. You just say attached. So like, he's attached to you, but he's not an ally. He's not someone who's tied to you lineally or through lineage. Now, keep in mind that the paganism that was on display wasn't only limited to like the great stone idols that we often hear about, but it's also something that's tied to trees, and other rocks. And we have Abu Waqid al-Laythi. He mentions that Quraysh had this great green tree, and it used to be referred to as Dhat Anwat. And they used to come every year and hang their weapons on it, and they would sacrifice beside it, and they devote themselves for a full day. Now, one may assume that hanging their weapons on the trees perhaps has to do with something like getting blessings for war. Personally, I'm not really certain in regards to the origins of this act. Now, a fascinating example of shirk is mentioned in Sirat ibn Ishaq when speaking about the tribe of Khawlan. And this is like one of the crazier stories. Basically, they had the idol called Am-Anas, or in some reports Umyanis. Now, Ibn Ishaq, he mentions that they used to divide their crops and cattle between the idol and Allah. And now, if the cattle that they gave to Allah, it would go into the section of Am-Anas's cattle. They would basically leave it there for Am-Anas. But if Am-Anas's cattle went into the portion that was for Allah, they would return it back to the idol. And we'd actually find this in Surah Al-An'am. And it says, the pagans set aside for Allah a share of the crops and cattle he created, saying, this portion is for Allah, so they claim, and this is for our associate gods. Now, this example here, the picture is even clearer. And that's because some of the polytheists even seemed to favor the demigods over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their actions. Ibn Qayyim quotes a report about Amanas or Umyanis, in regards to the tribe of Khawlan. They came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to pledge their allegiance to him. And when he asked them about their idol, they said, Alhamdulillah, Allah has substituted them in the place of their former religion, that which you, O Muhammad, brought to us. But there are some old men and women that are still holding on to him. But if we return to him, then we will surely destroy him, destroy this idol. For he was a trial. For this idol was a trial. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, what is the greatest trial that you've seen from him? And they said, check this out, yeah, brothers. They said, we saw a time in which we ate leftover bones. This is how poor they were. Okay? They only ate leftover bones. They don't have any food. So we brought together all that we could and brought with it 100 bulls, then slaughtered it to Amanas. Imagine, they don't have food, but they slaughter bulls for the idol as a means to get closer to him in a single day. And we left the slaughtered bulls for the beasts. Imagine, yeah, they kill the bulls, they left the bulls. They can't eat it because this is for the idol. This is a sacrifice for the idol. And the beasts from the wilderness, they came and they ate the bulls. And then he says, and we are in greater need for them than the beasts. And then what happened? And then the rain came down upon us, and we saw the grass grow high enough to cover a man. Now, personally, I haven't come across an authentic path for this report, but it does seem to reflect the understanding of the people of the time. People, they would seek the help of idols. They would sacrifice their own cattle, in this report, bulls, for the idol. Naturally, in many cases, nothing's going to happen. But in some cases, coincidentally, rain would come down. And when rain came down, people actually believe that these are the idols and they have the ability to grant people rain and to grant people blessings and to grant people provisions, right? Now, it's important to keep in mind that the rain, yeah, brothers, the rain at that time is everything. I'll tell you something. If you ask me, would you rather have rain, or would you rather have no rain for a year, or your favorite restaurant closes down? Yeah, I would choose no rain for a year, because I'm quite attached to my favorite restaurant. I have lunch from that place quite often. It would break my heart to see it go away. But if I didn't get rain for a year, that would hurt me. Excuse me, but it wouldn't be that bad, you know, because hey, you know, it's a bit hot this year, but that's pretty much it. For a year. Wouldn't hot this year, but that's pretty much it. That means they're all going to die. And if